Hello, everyone. It's Professor Schachter, and I'm here to go over Chapter 8 with you and go over the ideas and the elements of this chapter that you have to know for any quiz or a final exam. So, Chapter 8 is one of, excuse me, one of two creative chapters in the book. As a matter of fact, creativity is the only element in this book that is that has two chapters dedicated to it. So the things we're going to have to know about this chapter is what creative strategy is in advertising, how the creative process works, how we develop a creative strategy, and other things like a major selling idea that are used for the basis of an advertising campaign. Okay, so let's move forward. You have to understand the difference between what a strategy is and what a tactic is. So, a strategy is what we want to say or communicate. So, for example, we want to say that this, let's say, automobile is a high performance automobile. Another one we can say is that this is a very safe automobile. So, this is the overview of what we want to say. Now, a lot of companies may have the same message that they're safe, they're fast, they're reliable, they're luxurious. However, what differentiates is how they are executed, the tactics. The tactics is how we're going to say it, not what we want to say, right? So that is the difference in branding, how we say things, how that's part of positioning. That is what the consumer sees, processes, and attempts to understand and see how it relates to their life. So, the central theme of the campaign is based on the tactic. So, for example, in the old days, we had something called Absolute Vodka, and every visual was a pun on Absolute Vodka. So, we had Absolute Martini, Absolute Love, Absolute whatever. So, the central theme was absolute blank that you had to fill in. And this is also basically how what the slogan is. The slogan of a campaign is that one element that ties the whole campaign together. So if it's so old brands have these amazing taglines and slogans. I shouldn't say old brands because some of them are pretty lame slogans, but the slogans are what ties it all in. Just do it from Nike. One of the most famous ones tied in a lot of Nike's campaign. So for BMW, it's about performance. All right. So that's everything we show in a BMW ad is how the car performs from a racing point of view. Other car companies, like let's say Mercedes, may deal with luxury, and Audi deals with technology. So the thing about creative ads and and how we define creativity is, does it meet the marketing objectives? Creativity in advertising or communications in general has one specific purpose: to activate and accomplish the marketing objectives. Remember, communications objectives are derived and serve marketing objectives. So to derive from and serve marketing objectives. So something that's extremely creative can determine the success of a product or service, but that doesn't mean it will increase sales. And it does not mean that if it wins an award, it was a successful campaign. Successful meaning in terms of sales. A lot of campaigns have won awards that never really moved the needle on sales. So award should never ever be a factor in what you do. What should be a factor in what you do is absolutely accomplishing the marketing objectives. That's what makes us successful on behalf of clients. So the different perspectives on creativity, which are sometimes tested. So, for example, from a manager's point of view, and by manager, we speak about the client side, right? They only care if it's creative, if it sells the product. If it doesn't sell the product, it wasn't creative. The ads are nothing more than promotional tools, and they have to be received favorably in the marketplace. But again, it's about sales. A manager or a client, a lot of times, are very risk adverse, which means they want creative, but they don't want creative that has a lot of risk to it, like that could offend someone, that could be misinterpreted, that could be taken the wrong way. Okay. So, what we try to do is satisfy the manager, or in this case, the client's risk parameters, meaning we don't want to go beyond what they're willing to accept, while at the same time still accomplish the goals that they have for their brand. So, as you can see, from a creative person's perspective, um, executing a creative campaign also requires approval from the client, but also working within the client's um, risk parameters. I'll say that again, risk tolerance. Okay, so it's a very, very fine line how much we can push a client to actually break through. It's their comfort level. And if they don't approve the product's communication or advertising, it doesn't go anywhere. Okay. Now, creative people, I was one of them, I was a creative director. We always want to go far out. All right. And just because we go far out, as I've learned through the years as I've gotten older, that it doesn't mean we're going to sell. All right. Being overly creative, sometimes from a consumer's point of view, they'll see something that's overly creative, and they'll love it. They may laugh at the joke or go, wow, I can't believe they did that. But the product sales message gets lost, or the brand name gets lost. So what they remember is everything but the most important parts. So we want to maximize the correct impact, the impact that actually leads to and accomplishes the sales objectives and the marketing objectives. Now, what determines creativity? Creativity has to be fresh and unique. Not many things are fresh and unique. They usually built or recreations on other things. A lot of things are what I like to call sequels. Die Hard 1, Die Hard 2, Die Hard 3, or any other movie that you know has sequels. But the important thing is, are the ideas appropriate? Okay. So you don't have to worry about divergence or relevance, but you do have to understand that advertising creativity has to be fresh, has to be unique. I'll even add elements like relevant to the consumer. I showcases how it solves a problem, and it is on brand. No matter what you do, celebrities, influencers, whatever, you have to be on brand. All right. Now, this will never be asked on a test. The determinants of creativity, but you should know everything I mentioned before we saw this slide. So we can skip ahead over this. So the creative challenge has always been, how do I show a product in a memorable way, memorable for the right reasons, meaning what the product does, what problems the product solves, and why does it do it better than other products or competition on the market. So every marketing competition is different. So let me give you an example. When Microsoft ran ads for Microsoft Surface, they try to take a very kind of Apple approach, and it didn't really work for Microsoft. I'm not saying the product wasn't good. What I'm saying, the tone and the manner of the Surface commercials were very much the same kind, reminded people of Apple. So when you try to be fresh, you really want to establish your own voice, your own image, your own visual ecosystem, your own language that will set you apart. Now, when you take a creative risk, it means that, well, let's put it this way. When Nike ran the Colin Kaepernick ad, they had at risk. When Apple did the 1984 campaign, They ran a risk. So we'll go over these more detail, I think, in chapter 9. And I'm going to put links up to these campaigns I mentioned. But risk, the only reward you have to risk is success. If you don't have success, the risk is you can lose the account. And that happens a lot. Okay. So as advertising must sell the product or service. That's absolutely true. That's without debate. Building an emotional bond definitely helps. Brands that have been able to connect emotionally with consumers have always done better. They've developed more brand loyalty, but it's always about the selling. So, although you need to know the difference between suits or rationalists and creative poets, every campaign needs to have a little bit of an element of both, where it's appropriate. So, if it's a sales promotion, it'll be more hard sell than if it's just an awareness campaign. So, these are what makes up a creative personnel. Now, the creative personnel in an agency is a copywriter that writes the ads and a art director who's in charge of the image building. There are a lot of other people, but basically this is the team that starts the process. Now, we always discuss this and we bring it up on exams as well. Young's model of the creative process is these steps. So immersion is the most important step, because without doing immersion really well, and I emphasize these with my students all the time, there is no such thing as cutting corners. You may see that sometimes when I grade. There's no such thing as superficial things. You must really eat, sleep, and breathe the product. And that takes a lot of work. It takes visiting factories, okay? It takes visiting dealerships, restaurants, the whole chain in the chain of production. You must really, really understand every part about this product. I was on an account once where I had to go to the factories. Doesn't matter what the account is. I went to the factories. I stayed there for days watching the process. Then I went to the restaurants where the product was sold, and I sat there for days watching people eat and interact with the brand. And then I read hundreds and hundreds of reviews. I'm talking about article reviews, not Yelp, on the product. I read brochures. I read manufacturing processes on the competition. It took months and months of research before I was ready to write one line of copy, before I was ready to create one headline. And I'm going to say this in this place here. A lot of students at this stage of their careers are superficial. They don't understand that you cannot be superficial. You cannot just throw words around like perhaps, or it might be this target market, or they might use it for that, or generic terms like young adults, or middle aged, or wealthy, or very well off. Things like that. They don't mean anything. As much as we try, we have to make this an exact science, and then because then we spend weeks and weeks understanding the consumer, not just the product, the consumer, and how they do it how they relate to the competition. If we're not prepared to do this, then we're not prepared to be marketers. So Young's process model of the creative process starts with immersion. And then you have to figure out and understand what all that information you went through and read and participated in and observed means. That's the digestion period. And then you take a break. And by me, I do mean take a break. I used to go to movies, long drives for a day or so, and really try to not think about the process in order for my brain to relax and to let ideas come. That's called incubation. And more often than not, I had that aha moment of, why don't we say this? Why don't we do this? That's illumination. Sometimes I was proven correct, and sometimes I wasn't. And that's when we do that reality check or verification. The last step is always, did the idea I came up with last night at 3 a.m. really the correct idea? Is that really the way we want to go? Does it make sense? And Everything ends with that verification part. And if the answer is no, you just start over again. So a Young's model had those 5 steps. Wallace's model has only 4 steps. And the difference is only that its preparation is the first step, which brings together immersion and digestion. Everything else is the same: incubation, illumination, verification. So if you see the word preparation, you know it's Wallace's. If you see the word immersion or digestion, it's Young's. Both of these will be on a quiz and or final exam. The account planners are the ones who also do a lot of research. So in addition to the copywriters using the account planners research, and we do our own, all the stuff I discussed, account planning does also research. And they prepare documents for the creative people to work on and for the account execs to also work on and understand, because they'll be doing the client relationship. So account planners are very important people, and they do a lot of the groundwork. And account planning is usually an entry level position. Some of the things we look at when we do the research are background research with all these bullet points. And then we look at how do we organize the information, the product information, the market, the competition, what are trends, developments, what has happened in the marketplace. That's what we have to stay up to date on news and events. And product or service specific research. Let's find out about the consumers. Let's find out what they like about it. Let's find out what they don't like about it. All right. Why are they not willing to give it a try? That's also part of the process. Then we do brand research. Um, that's another thing that's very intense. So this is part of like how it really works. And if you want to look this up on Google, be my guest. Usually don't test on it, but it's important to know. So some of the things that we do, the book doesn't go into a lot of detail on a lot of them, but focus groups are, believe it or not, are still done. Even though people listen on social media, focus groups are still important on some level to clarify some matters that are not on social media or that we didn't find through social listening. Ethnographic research is very time consuming and very expensive. And that's when we follow people around in one manner or another and see how they actually use the product. That's a very in depth, long term study, and we're embedded into people's lives with their permission. So, anyway, so you have to look at these as part of everything I just said. It's just sort of a review of everything I discussed. So let's look at, let me see if there's a picture of it here. No. All right, so let's go over some definitions you'll need. So you'll need to know the definition of a storyboard, which is basically just a series of drawings. And I'm going to post up, and I'm writing myself a note here not to forget. I'm going to post up a photo of a storyboard in your Blackboard shell. Okay, so you'll see exactly what it is. An advertising campaign, like I said, is a series of ads or and TV commercials. Let's call them executions, and they're tied together by one slogan or tagline. Advertising campaign, this kind of, don't worry about this. I mean, you should know what it says, but none of these things are carved in stone. Some companies don't use slogans. That's true. Slogans must be simple, catchy, and predictable. But here's what all that means. If you can see it on a T-shirt, it's a great slogan. If you can see it on a bumper sticker on a car, it's a great slogan. All right. For example, finger licking good, just for Kentucky Fried Chicken. um, Save 50 in 50. Give us 15 minutes. We'll save you 15% on car insurance. That pretty much says it all. Geico. So it has to deliver a message too. Okay. So here are some slogans. Now, one of the things you're going to have to do in your copywriting class, AC231, is create a creative brief. And it's a two-step process. And I'll show you what the creative brief has in it. So these are the elements that you need to know. It defines the issue. For example, what am I supposed to do with my ad? Oh, make people aware of the brand, tell people that it's all natural and organic, tell people that it saves them money. What's the problem I'm trying to solve for the consumer? So and what are my communications objectives? Who am I speaking to? 18 to 24, 5 to 10-year-olds? Who am I speaking to? Specifically, who am I speaking to? This doesn't say, again, young adults, okay? There's no such thing as young adults unless there's an age attached to them. Because a young adult is a very generic term that can be younger than whom, all right? A 17-year-old is a young adult, and so is a 14-year-old. So who? What are the key benefits or major selling idea to communicate in our ad? What do we want to say? What are the key things we want to say? It's refreshing. Okay, that's it. That's an idea. And what is the proof that we have for people to believe this? Why will they believe anything we say? What is there scientific proof? Is there doctors who testified to this? How do we know it's true? Do we want to use humor? Do we want to use straightforward? How do we want to say it? That's tone. And of course, deliverables, meaning film, photography, those are deliverables. What do we need to have and give them to whom? And how do we measure success? What are the, how do we measure? In other words, how many people saw it? Is that a measure? How much awareness did we get? Is that a measure? Sales, is that a measure? So we have to define the measure of success. So when we talk about a major selling idea, what we're talking about is that one thing the company can say about its product or service, and in a way that no one else has said it about a similar product or service. It has broad appeal, meaningful appeal, and it's what every execution is going to be based upon. So when we talk about a USP or a unique selling proposition, this was created by Rosser Reeves back in the day when he was at I forgot which agency it was when. It was a big one. Ooh, forgot. But anyway, Rosser Reeves said that a unique selling proposition is something that your product does better than your competing products, or something your product has that your competing products do not have, and it's meaningful to your target audience. Meaningful. It's also can't be copied or duplicated. So it's very hard to have a unique selling proposition these days with the way products are very easily copied. But back in the day, USPs, and even today, if we can find a USP, we use it. And if it resonates with the consumers, we never stop using it. So for Apple these days, the USP is privacy. They can afford to do it because they don't make money off advertising. While Facebook and Google, all they are is about advertising. And that also determines the positioning. The positioning is what the consumer thinks about a brand. But that positioning is built on what we as creatives and marketing communications people say about the brand. We develop consumer attitudes towards that brand. That consumer attitude is the belief, is the connection of positioning. So basically, is if I'm thinking of Nike as a great sports shoe company, that's Nike's position that they infused into my brain for the past 30, 40 years that they've been around. Actually, 40 years. Actually, no, sorry, almost 50 years. So USP is about benefits, has to be unique, and it has to be a strong promise. So we've all familiar with image selling, which is just about, wow, that's the image, you know? I always believe there has to be more than just image in order to sell a product. That's a personal belief. So an inherent drama is something you have to discuss. It's because you see people discussing ideas or solving problems in commercials and stuff. That's the drama. What is the problem and how does it get solved? It's like a mini drama, like, or mini story. A mini, I mean 30 seconds. So to go deeper into positioning, what the consumer's mind is convinced to believe about a product, that's the product positioning. And it's about attributes of the brand and the creative way in which those attributes are presented. So when people believe that a brand is whatever, inclusive, good for the world, whatever. For example, when people believe that Tesla is better than a fossil fueled car, it's because Tesla wants to make you believe that electric cars are like that. What no one's talking about is how damaging to the environment the batteries are, or how much mining is done and the earth is ripped up to dig up the elements for the batteries, right? We just position Tesla as an electric car that's better than oil because oil is dug out of the dirt and everyone knows that once in a while we have an oil spill. So you must capture the consumer's attention. You must be able to translate this idea from social media to billboards to videos to an ad on Hulu. It must be the kind of idea that can transcend many different types of media channels. Okay, so this is the end of chapter 8, and I want you to read chapter 8 in detail. And I am going to post up now the some of the elements in commercials that I discussed in order for you to get an idea of what I meant by them. All right. I hope you enjoyed this lecture and have a great day.